was Melania's reaction, if you don't mind my asking? I know this is very personal, when she learned about what happened on that field in Butler.
She was watching.
Oh, she was watching in real time?
She was watching live. It was all over the place. It was on television. It was on your network, but it was all over the place. And she was watching. I asked her that. I mean, I wasn't there. I was on the ground. And
Donald Trump vowed to tell the story of the assassination attempt only one time.
What happened? Tell us what happened, please. And therefore, I will tell you exactly what happened. And you'll never hear it from me a second time because it's actually too painful to tell.
But he never said anything about not discussing Melania's story of the day he was shot.
When the world started to, like, you could talk to people, I said, so what was your feeling? And she can't really even talk about it.
Traumatized.
Which is okay, because that means she likes me.
No, she loves me. That's good.
I mean, let's say she could talk about it freely. That wouldn't be, I'm not so sure which is better. But she either likes or loves me, and that's nice.
I guess Melania isn't talking about it either. I'm not sure he was ready for that question, considering all the turbulence that his marriage has publicly gone through, from her absence in D.C. immediately after he won in 2016 to his hush money trial just a couple of months ago, where he held regular hallway press conferences.
I want to start by wishing my wife, Melania, a very happy birthday. It'd be nice to be with her, but I'm at a courthouse for a rig trial. It's a rig trial. Terrible. But we're doing very well in this rig trial, and everybody knows it. Yesterday was a big day, but I do have to begin by wishing Melania happy birthday. She's in Florida. I'll be going there this evening after this case finishes up, this horrible, unconstitutional case.
Not sure if he was wishing her a happy birthday or using her birthday as a sympathy factor in his quest for a public acquittal, since he didn't have a chance to win in court. I guess he had to try anything to get some of the attention off of the graphic details that were being relayed inside.
How's Melania doing with it?
She's fine, but I think it's very hard for her. I mean, she's fine. But it's, you know, she has to read all this crap. It's stuff that shouldn't even be put in the trial. The judge should have never allowed it to be in the trial. Yeah. And she has to read all this stuff?
It was crazy to see the former president, who represents a party that preaches the importance of family while characterizing their political opponents as anti-family, try to make sense of their arrogance while his trial exposed him again. I mean, the argument is always that they have superior family morals compared to Americans that aren't interested in dictating to each other how to live. Trump has attacked damn near every opponent's spouse, from Ted Cruz and Hillary Clinton to VP Harris, completely forgetting the fact that Melania is nowhere to be found.
Tonight, where is Melania Trump, the former First Lady, missing from campaign events since Donald Trump's campaign launched 16 months ago, despite her being a regular presence by her husband's side in his last two campaigns?
Sources close to the Trump campaign tell CNN that even now, well into the election contest, it is still unknown how much she will publicly help her husband's re-election bid. She'll definitely have a role, but in terms of what it is, I don't know, a source close to the Trump campaign tells CNN. It is her decision on how much or how little she will be campaigning. So far, her decision appears to be the latter. Numerous sources both within and close to the campaign told CNN that as of now, there is no indication that she'll be taking on a ramped-up role in the campaign. Sources tell CNN that it is Melania who dictates her involvement, picking and choosing with intention. She is very selective and methodical in what she wants to do and how she presents herself.
I think part of the beauty is that mystery.
Melania never appearing with him in court, and only glimpses of her surfacing on social media. Melania's absence becoming campaign trail fodder and only heightened by her husband.
At the appropriate time, she'll be out there.
Seems like MAGA supporters have just accepted that they'll preach family values while supporting a guy that never illustrates it. Kind of like how they just accepted his history of groping and sexual assault while claiming that he's Christ-like. But that's just his wife. They may not be so accepting when it comes to his running mate.
Some of it's coming from Republicans who I think want to go back to the days of open borders and perpetual war. How do you expect to use him in this campaign, and what can you say to our viewers tonight to reassure them that this was an excellent pick?
Well, first of all, he's got tremendous support. And he really does among a certain group of people that like families. I mean, he made a statement having to do with families. That doesn't mean that people that aren't a member of a big and beautiful family with 400 children around and everything else, it doesn't mean that a person doesn't have, he's not against anything, but he loves family. It's very important to him. He grew up in a very interesting family situation, and he feels family is good. And I don't think there's anything wrong in saying that.
It's always fun to recognize which stage of political cleanup Trump and MAGA are in the middle of. With J.D. Vance's seemingly endless stockpile of hateful comments about Americans without children, they've already covered denying that he said it or that it was taken out of context. And they pushed through the he was just joking stage, and they're left with just sitting back and watching just how bad of a pick James David really was.
Not just childless cat ladies. Turns out there are many more ways Trump's running mate has described people without children. The word sociopath used a lot.
Brand new this morning, more than childless cat ladies, way more.
I've seen people who become more attached to their communities, to their families, to their country because they have children. So I would say that we should care about declining fertility, not just because it's bad for our economy, but because we think babies are good. And we think babies are good because we're not sociopaths.
There's just these basic cadences of life that I think are really powerful and really, really valuable when you have kids in your life. And the fact that so many people, especially in America's leadership class, just don't have that in their lives, I worry that it makes people more sociopathic and ultimately our whole country a little bit less less mentally stable. And of course, you talk about going on Twitter. Final point I'll make is you go on Twitter, and almost always the people who are most deranged and most psychotic are people who don't have kids at home.
In August of 2021, in a fundraising email, CNN found he appealed to donors by mentioning the, quote, radical childless leaders in this country. And then he tweeted in 2021, quote, cat ladies must be stopped.
They must be stopped. From what? Grabbing about 20 cans of Fancy Feast from the store? It's puzzling that Vance won that Senate seat with all of this out there in the first place, and that Trump world didn't foresee any of this as an issue before selecting him. We keep wondering why Trump chose such a flawed and unlikable running mate, but when you stop to think about the former president's flaws and likability, it makes a lot of sense.
After his uncle was elected president, Fred Trump says he saw an opportunity to advocate for the disabled.
I was in the Oval Office 12 times and that was our mission, to advocate for people with complex disabilities.
Describing a phone call to alert his uncle the medical fund set up by the family for his son William was running low, a fund he says the former president consistently replenished.
A couple of years ago, I called him. I said, Donald, the fund's running out. And without hesitation, he said, your son doesn't recognize you. Let him die and move to Florida.
Were you surprised?
It's a great question. My response was, no, Donald, he does recognize me, and said, I'll thanks, and hung up. Was I surprised? I don't think you could hear something like that and not be surprised. But that is what he has become. It's sad.
It's almost hard to believe until you stop and think about how Trump has openly treated some of the closest people in his life. Then that story from his nephew makes all the sense in the world. There's probably countless instances of prominent political officials that have some unsavory family stories out there. But the nerve to make your family a large part of your appeal to voters when you haven't done much to cultivate that life adds an extra layer of dishonesty. It shows that this focus on families is just a huge ploy to trick MAGA supporters into believing a fairy tale for the sake of regaining power, while they have zero concerns for families that trust him. Here's VP Harris's surrogate, Senator Raphael Warnock, talking about family.
I sat down and I wrote a letter to my 5-year-old daughter. She was 5 at the time, Chloe. And I said, dear Chloe, today we confirm to the United States Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson in the history of our nation. She's the first Supreme Court justice who looks like you with hair like yours. And as we were confirming her, a friend of mine, the vice president, suggested that I write a letter. By the way, she's the first vice president who looks like you. I write to say that in America, you can be anything you set your head and your heart to be. Love, Dad. I wrote that letter to my 5-year-old daughter. I was so caught up with enthusiasm, I called her on FaceTime to read the letter. She was 5 years old. She listened to the letter. She was not impressed. She said, "Can I go out and play now?" She didn't understand that letter then, but she'll understand it in a few years. America, now is our time to write a letter to all of our children. Now is our time to write a letter to the future. Are you ready to write a letter to the future? Are you ready to tell your children that you stood up for democracy, that you stood up for a woman's right to choose, that you stood up for health care, that you stood up for the dignity of work? Are you ready to write a letter that says you stood up for the planet, that you embraced an America that embraces all of our children? Together we did it before, and together we will do it again. God bless you.